Get strong.
Hello and welcome back to a special episode of Towncast Pembroke. Joining me this evening is local activist, somebody who wants to do something for the town. Chloe Richards. Good evening, Chloe.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, good. So I'm just going to show everyone what I've just been talking about when, what I was showing on camera, where it's a lovely sunset, and you can tell it is because if I go like that, like half of my face kind of disappears. So I'm trying to sit back and kind of be out the way. So it looks a little weird, but don't worry about it. So Chloe, you're standing in the election in Market Ward. She's standing for Plaid Cymru in election. So obviously election was brought about by the passing of Brian Hall that many of us knew. Some of us bought golf clubs off him. So yeah, let's start off with a couple of easy ones. Let's just tell us about yourself and where you're from and why you're standing.
So, I'm Chloe, as you've already said. I've lived in and around Pembroke Dock all my life. Specifically, the last 15 years, I've been in Market Ward itself. I say in all my life, all bar the few years I spent in Cardiff doing my degree and getting a little bit of experience before coming home because I got very, very homesick. But yeah, I'm a trained nurse by background. I'm a critical care nurse by trade. So I work locally in Withybush in the intensive care unit. My role's changed recently. I've gone into more of an educational role within the intensive care unit. But the big thing about me, and I think activist is probably the right word really, is I am a proud trade union member and I stand up for the voices of nurses at a local and national level. And I thought to myself, well, I could do that at home. And with the sad passing of Brian Hall, it was very unexpected. I thought, I'm going to have to wait till bloody May when the council elections come up before I do anything, because I was really empowered by the recent Senedd elections to do more, really. And weirdly enough, I joked with my grandparents at the kitchen table. I said, oh, poor Brian Hall's gone. That means his seat's going to be empty. I might have to run for that. And within 7 days, I was up and running in the election.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's when you stand for a party, people kind of assume you're a career politician and you're all of this kind of stuff. But you're a nurse, but you've dealt with some big people. You've dealt with important people. So standing up for people in Market Ward's not going to be that difficult a job for you, is it?
No, I don't think so. I'm on a national committee for intensive care nurses. So, I've dealt with the big wigs within the trade union itself. I've met many of the MSs, both through my trade union work and more recently as well with the election work that's happened. I can't lie to you. I've always had an interest in politics. And my family have always said to me, Chloe, you'd make a damn good politician. I was like, yeah, but, they're a bit dodgy, some of them. But I want to make a change, really. I used to talking to people professionally, but maintaining my own ground as well. I'm not a pushover. I won't let anyone bulldoze me into an argument, but I also know when to step back and say, right, this is going nowhere. Let's regroup and we'll come back at another time, which I think is what Market Ward needs in an elected official, really. They need somebody who knows when to stop fighting that fight and come at it at a different angle, maybe. And that maybe bulldozing your way through something isn't quite the right track to take.
But I mean, Market Ward is a fairly big ward now, isn't it? So it's got a lot of stuff in it. There's the port, there's Barrack Hill, there's countless number of streets and what have you, and you pounded most of those streets and knocked on doors and what have you. You may well have come across my mother. I apologize for that already. So what kind of things are people saying to you when you're knocking on the door?
Oh, it is a big ward, and it's a weird shape as well. I'll give it that. There's been a couple of issues that have been raised while we've been out and about and talking to people, and it's been really important to me that I've been able to talk to the residents, the people that I would represent if I am elected. Some of the big issues were streets with permit parking, that it wasn't quite controlled as well as it should be, and then neighbouring streets that weren't permit controlled were being overrun by the vehicles that weren't able to park in the permit spaces because there's so many cars around these days, which is to be expected in this day and age. But I think one of the big things that came across was actually the state of some of our pavements and roads. So a lot of potholes that could be dealt with. One resident in particular was telling us that he uses a mobility scooter, and the sheer state of the pavements make it almost inaccessible for him to get into the town, and that he's constantly running over weeds and cracks in the paths. And on the subject of weeds, the weeds in the Barrack Hill, a lot of our residents back onto the Barrack Hill. They've said there's lots of weeds growing into their garden from it, and it's quite not well looked after.
See, yeah, I think you touched on this already, that there's a limited amount of time that you've got to actually make an impact in this. So what I mean by that is there's an election, a council election next May, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. So yeah, some of the things that people are talking about and bringing up, these are long-term issues that have come from long-term neglect and long-term decline. So how do you manage that bit where somebody might be saying, oh, do this, do this, do this. I'll do this tomorrow and we'll have it all shining and paved with gold by next week. How do you get across the reality of what we're dealing with people?
I think that's a skill within itself. It's about being realistic with them, with the residents, saying, okay, I've noted down your concern, and if I'm elected, I will do my best to get something in motion. And it's a skill that I've learned from being a trade union steward, really, because people come with you with expectations up to the sky. They want the very top of things. And then you've got the management coming in and saying, no, they want the very ground. It's finding that middle ground, really. So, yeah, some of these things that have come, that residents have said to me, are very big projects. But even if I can just get the groundwork done, get the dodge work done in the start, to start the ball rolling in it, and to see, right, what little thing can have that small impact to start with, that can, get the ball rolling into a bigger project.
So, I mean, how do you feel about community groups doing stuff? I was talking to a community group today in Saundersfoot that started originally as a beach cleaning group and are now rogue gardeners, if you like. So if there's a discarded patch or whatever, then they'll just kind of go and garden and things like that. We don't really have that stuff in Pembroke. So Pembroke Dock. Oh, you can tell where I've moved, can't you? But we don't have that in the dock. How could we get that sort of thing going? Now, that community spirit.
Well, there's a lot of community spirit in the dock, and there are certain groups that we could probably approach to see, would they be interested in starting a small club, to just taking the weeds or wild gardening, for example. There are patches of grass within the ward and within Pembroke Dock itself that are completely overrun, and you fester in the relationships with the community groups we've got already. you may be able to break off and create another one that is targeted to these different little projects and things. I think our communities wouldn't run as they are without these groups, without these volunteers, without the people of the wards giving up their time to do all these different groups that they're a part of. And if there's any way that as an elected official I can support them, even if it is just a case of turning up and getting my hands dirty. I love a bit of gardening, I won't lie, on a side note. But, there's got to be something that we can do to support them at a local level to start with. And if that expands into something bigger, then we'll jolly good.
I think that's the way forward, probably certainly for small communities like ours, is you have to kind of those days when the council used to come and do everything for you are kind of gone, and they don't exist anymore. So you have to kind of go and do some stuff yourself, and then get other people to support you, which is a message that some people don't want to hear, and I get that. I get that.
But everything starts with one good deed. You see one person doing one good deed, you think, oh, I could do that. And next thing you know, there's two of you doing a good deed. And it could just be simply as you're mowing that patch of communal grass together. And then somebody comes on and seeing that you've done that, and they think, oh, they've done that out there free time. Maybe I'll go and plant some wildflowers to encourage the wildlife in the area. And it's very much of, and I think, I'll harp back, and I'm guilty as charged, I really shouldn't, but COVID times is a fine example of the community. People were forming bubbles with their vulnerable neighbours to support them. And I think it's just remembering that community spirit does exist, and that we need to nurture it and grow it into wider community networks.
It seems like that where you need somebody at the front going, okay, let's do this, let's do this, and you need somebody on the council that's going to go, right, okay, if I can get 20 people together, can I get the council to
can you buy me will a council fund me a spade or some shears or some, I'm taking gardening, weeding as my example. I'm running with it at the minute, but it could just be something as simple as that. You can say, oh, I got the interest of X amount of people, what can you help give me to help support them? And then pilot it in one area, expand it to another.
I'm liking that. So one of the key things that you said has been brought up is obviously potholes. And I brought this up on one of my pods ages ago. I'll tell you when it was. It was last Christmas, because for my birthday I went to England for the weekend. We had a nice, lovely weekend away in England. And if we think we've got pothole problems, oh my Lord. We've got a couple of divots here and there. But yeah, it is important to people, and we've got the key driver for Pembrokeshire, or certainly for South Pembrokeshire, for trade with the ferry port. So we've got massive trucks running back and forth down what we used to call Route 9, which is the middle of Market Ward. So with all of that kind of in your head, how do we fix the potholes that are caused by constant heavy traffic that's getting heavier day after day? If we're going to repair those potholes, we're going to have to close off a whole load of roads, and do you know what I mean? So how do you broach that with people?
I think careful and open planning would be how I would start. Be like, right, we'll do it, maybe do it in small segments. Say if there's a particular road that's got more potholes than the other, right, fine, let's have a look to see whether we can just do the worst of it to start with and then expand it out. And it may take a year, it may take 6 months. It would depend on what budgetary allowances there would be within the council for fixing the potholes. Cars are not going away, lorries are not going away, and at the end of the day, just talking from personal experience, potholes cost me 4 new tyres in 2 years, and tyres are expensive.
Yeah.
And you're right, we don't have potholes. I've also seen some of the ones that they have in the big cities in England, and I was shocked. I was like, blooming heck, we moan about what we've got. But that's what's important to the people of our local people. And like I said, cars and lorries aren't going away. So I think we've got to support that infrastructure, because it is what brings the trade into Pembroke Dock and into Market Waters. The ferry terminal is literally on our doorstep. So it's just about making sure that we put the plans into place that cause the least amount of disruption, but being open and honest about how much we can actually achieve within what's left of the financial year, really.
Yeah, and again, you hit the nail on the head there. Within the financial year, what can be achieved? Maybe a little bit can be. Maybe actually it is more of a long-term plan, isn't it?
And even if it is just laying that groundwork and saying, right, these are the plans that we want to factor into the budget. It's finding that right person in the council who can help you get it in there.
So within the port, then we've also got Celtic Freeport. Okay, so Celtic Freeport has been set up with all the big shenanigans to bring investment into Pembroke Dock, bring jobs into Pembroke Dock, bring careers, not jobs. Let's bring careers into Pembroke Dock and educate our youngsters up to a level where actually they're taking these jobs. I think, but the whole project just seems to be not happening at the minute. There's no tangible feel of that project happening to people that live in I say my mother lives in Market Wood. She is probably about 500 yards away from the entrance to the port of Pembroke. And when I talk to her about Celtic Freeport, she hasn't got a clue what it is or what's happening. So, what are your thoughts on that as a future of Pembroke Dock? Is it going to work for us? Or do we need to start being a bit more bolshy about let's have a bit more of it?
I think, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't know masses about it myself. It's not, I suppose it's not something that I've really looked into as much as I probably should have, given that we're coming up to an election, and I will hold up my hands to that. It's very hard running in an election. I'm working full time, I'll be honest. But
a lot of people are in the same boat, and a lot of people see but there's nothing there that says this is what's happening, is it?
And I think that is bad. I will hold my hands up and say I don't think that's right. I think if they want to offer it as a career to our young people, then they need to be more involved with our schools from a younger age. They need to be more open about the sort of work that they do down there. And I think they need to look towards other ports and things within our county and look at what they're doing, because they seem to be excelling in certain areas compared to the Port of Pembroke Dock. So maybe we need to take a leaf out of their book and talk to their county councillors and see, right, so what are you doing to get your young people involved? What are you doing to get your constituents involved in your port? And how can we then replicate something similar or even do one better than what they're doing?
Absolutely. Cool. So before we carry on, as always, if you are still liking and loving what you're hearing, then I'm really pleased that you're with us. So if you do like what we're doing, please do subscribe and share us and all of those kind of stuff. It helps to spread the brand of Pembroke Dock. So local regular listeners will know that I kind of put it on the back burner for a while, but even when I put it on the back burner, I've still had a message from someone in Ireland who was coming over on the ferry. I just wanted a bit of information about hotels in Pembroke Dock. And I had a message from somebody who used to live in Pembroke Dock, but is now kind of south of France, just about memories and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's good to have kind of stuff there. So please do like, subscribe. It will make a massive difference to us. So um, let's go back a couple of stages and let's talk about Barrack Hill, because this is one of those bits that it's very easy to go, okay, let's go sort out Barrack Hill, because Barrack Hill's massive. It's in the middle, and we've got the barracks at the top and all that kind of stuff. Who owns Barrack Hill? Who's responsible for sorting out Barrack Hill? Do we actually know?
No, I don't think we genuinely know who the true owners of the Barrack Hill is. And as somebody who lives under the Barrack Hill, I have been, oh, I can't even think of the right word now, but I've been blocked in by the trees falling from it when we've had those terrible storms. I think there are parts of the Barrack Hill, in my opinion, should be owned by the council. There are parts of there that have a public footpath on them. Whether the council knows that they've got a public footpath on them or not, I'm not sure. But there are definitely parts of them that have got footpaths, and I can look out my bedroom window and I can see those footpaths. So I think it needs to be shared ownership, because at the end of the day, it is the Barrack Hill. It belongs to the barracks. So I think they need to take a bit of responsibility for it. I think council needs to take some responsibility for it. And anyone who uses it frequently should take a bit of responsibility for it. Don't let your dog defecate on it just because there's the bins at the very bottom of the path or the very top. It's not hard to take it with you.
And that comes back to that kind of community spirit that
Yeah,
we were talking about before, wasn't it? It's about having that bit in yourself that goes, actually, I can only make a small difference, but if there's 1,000 people making a small difference, well, that's a lot of small differences that goes forward, isn't it? And we're at the end of the line. We're literally at the end of the line. If we're not going to look after ourselves, there isn't a massive amount of people that are going to come and look after us. So we kind of need to start having that conversation with ourselves, really, don't we?
absolutely. And, they say, yeah, but I'm just a small drop in the ocean. Yeah, but if we're all just a small drop, we're going to be a mighty ocean.
Mm.
Even within Market Ward alone, I think there's easily over 1,000 people who live here. If you just take that one little bit of community spirit, that one little good deed, well, actually, I wouldn't want it to be looking like that for me to use it, then, things will get better. Like, don't get me wrong, it will take time. This is not none of things that we talked about or that, I could possibly think are going to be overnight fixes. But it's about laying that groundwork to get those fixes, to make this the place that we all know and love. All know and love, and that it can be. It's our home at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's the bit that a lot of us forget. I said I brought up in Pembroke Dock from age of 5 to, how old was I when I left? Well, I went to uni and then kind of came back and then didn't come back, and then was half and half. So it was about between. Yeah, I had about 15 years there, uh, uh, and then I was playing for the Queen's College. So there's a lot of connection there, and there's a lot of love for it. And I'm not the only person that has that connection with Pembroke Dock. And then you've got everybody that lives in Pembroke Dock. One of the people that I talk to more often, and I guarantee he will message because he watches this. Now lives in Essex, but he was brought up on Park Street with me. And yeah, he's always asking about what's going on in the dock. What's happening here? It's because people care.
Yeah.
When you're from the dock, you care about the dock, and sometimes we lose track of that, and we just need to be a bit more, yeah, a bit more bullshit about it, really. Yeah, let's get out and do
And
stuff, isn't it?
I don't think we celebrate our wins enough either. And you read a lot in the press, the negatives, the bad things that happen in the Pembroke dot, or is that, it's a dot town, it's really rough. But no, we've got a lot of positives going for ourselves as well, and we don't shout enough about them, and we don't shout enough about the good people that live in Pembroke Dock and do good deeds. Not everyone gets the recognition they deserve, and I find we don't share enough of our events and what's going on widely enough as well, which is why I think Towncast Pembroke Dock is such a good tool to have in our arsenal as people who live here. It's easy enough to flick on and see, right, what's actually happening in the area, what can I be a part of, how can I help build that community.
Yeah, and we need it. We desperately need it in the dock. So, okay, tell me what the future looks like under Chloe Richards. So let's assume you get in, and let's assume that you get back in next May, and what have you. So, what would you love to kind of like sort and go, right? Okay, this is what we can make the market ward look like.
I want the market ward to be the best ward it can possibly be. So for me, it is trying to resolve the issues that my constituents have, whether that is a pothole or helping them get the right support they need for antisocial behaviour. If it's okay, we need tighter control around the permit parking and the people who have permits who are not parking in the permit parking. I want to be a councillor that the people of my ward and outside of my ward, yes, I may be elected for this ward, but I would be a county councillor at the end of the day. So I am fighting for us all that they feel comfortable to come and talk to, whether it's you drop me a text, you drop me an email, you come and knock on my front door, you know?
Don't ask them to do that. Oh
No, I
my
won't.
word,
No,
don't
we
ask
won't
them
do
to do that.
that. But you know what I mean? I want to be approachable. I want people to know that I've got their backs and I'm willing to champion and fight for our local services, whether it's transport links, whether it's they've got a simple issue with the school. I want them to be able to have the backing of their county councillor, and for me, I want us to be a community again. I definitely feel it could just be a personal feeling, and I will freely admit that it probably is, that sometimes community spirit lacks or it follows certain activities around,
Yeah.
just for it's like I don't go to church. This, bit of a random one out there now, but St John's is in our ward, but I don't go to church every Sunday, but I like to go at Christmas because for me it's part of our tradition. But I don't want, although I don't go to church every Sunday, I don't want that community to perish either. And I want everybody to feel like they can live happily within the ward, no matter who they are, where they work, where they play. That probably not the right word, but where they relax, how they spend their downtime. As long as, and if they want to contribute to the community, they can, and they're not going to be judged for the way that they contribute. So yeah, you can only, I don't know, plant one flower in a plant pot that's empty in the town square. Nobody's going to judge you for that. They should be grateful that you've actually taken that step. But for me, a ward under my leadership, under my electorate, however you want to word it, I want it to be community driven, and I want everyone to be equal, but I want everybody's voices to be heard, even if they're fighting against each other, even if one group from, say, Law Street is saying one thing and the group up in Kitchener Close is saying something else. I want them to have that equal opportunity to be able to voice that to me, and then find that common ground, find that solution that works for everyone, for the ward and for the wider community of Pembroke Dock.
Okay. So I'm just going to pick up on one thing that
Yeah.
kind of, and I know that because as I say I've been a Plaid Cymru follower supporter for quite some time, but I don't speak Welsh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and all three of my kids do, but I don't, and I keep promising myself that I will. And people have this idea that Plaid Cymru is only for people who speak Welsh, and you can only be a part of Plaid Cymru if you speak, and everything they do is about speaking Welsh. So where do you sit on that one?
Well, so although, born and bred Pembroke Dock, Pembroke, I actually went to Preseli, so I can actually speak Welsh. So, but I think at the end of the day, Plaid Cymru is not the party of the Welsh language. It's the party of Wales. So they want what's best for Wales. And I believe the Welsh language is very important. I would encourage everyone to learn it, no matter what their age, whether they're 5 months old or 500 months old.
Yep.
But it's about being inclusive. I think the party very much is inclusive, because when I first said I want to be interested, I never told them I could speak Welsh. That came out at a later day, but they were still very supportive of me running in this election. It's about inclusivity. You're not going to be judged on the fact that you can't speak Welsh in Plaid Cymru. You're going to be. You wouldn't be. You're not. I can't think what I'm trying to say now. It's about you wanting the best for Cymru. You want the best for Wales. And the Welsh language is just one part of that. And I think that's the thing I can get out to people who have, in the Senedd election voted Plaid Cymru for the first time, and then they're having those doubts of, actually, it's just a party for those first language Welsh speakers. It's elitist in that way. It really isn't. It's a very open party. Where there's no judgment. Everything is bilingual. Yes, some people will speak Welsh, but if you take Anna Nicol, one of our MSs, she's a learner, and look at her, she's an MS in the Senedd. Yeah.
I think it's one of those bits that a lot of people kind of go, ooh, and actually when you look at it, when you look at the detail, you go, oh, actually, yes,
Yeah.
it's not a thing. So yeah, okay, let's wrap it up then. Okay, with a quick rundown of a full minute. You've got the floor for a full minute. Why should everyone in Market Ward vote for Chloe Richards? The floor is yours. You've got 1 minute. Off you go.
So I've managed to come out and speak to the vast majority of the ward, if not all of the ward, hopefully by the time of the election comes anyways. And I think you'll know that I am open and honest. I will let you hold me to account, but I will raise your voices up. It's not about my voice, it's about your voice. I have my priorities, but my priorities come from you. You are the important one in this. Yes, you're voting for me, but I am just the proxy for your voice. I've got the knowledge and the experience on speaking up and not being afraid to speak up, of communicating with people in power and not being afraid to tell them, no, you're actually wrong there. I want to get things done. Yes, this is only a by-election, but I can lay that groundwork so that in 9 months' time, when we get to May and you decide you're going to vote for me again, you can see that I have made a difference. It may only be small, but I will make a difference. You've had my leaflets through the door. You know what my main priorities are, but really, I am your voice. I am just the proxy for your voice in that county council hall. And I want to raise Market Ward's voice loud and proud.
Fantastic. Chloe, thank you for your time this evening.
No, thank you for having me.
So I thought there was at one point where I thought I might not ever actually do a Towncast again, and I really do actually just enjoy talking to local people about Pembroke Dock and all of that kind of stuff. It's really nice. Makes you feel part of the community again. So I'm gonna pitch out my one last bit again. If anybody fancies coming on Towncast, being a presenter with me, I will look after you. I will put you in little balls of cotton wool and make you happy. But yeah, drop me a line, ilovetowncast@gmail.com, and let's get Towncast back online so we can talk about all of these things. You know, we've spoken about, I say me, I've spoken about lots of these things in the past, and every now and again influential people listen and they hear what we're saying. So if you want to be a part of that, please do drop me a line. And yeah, when it comes to when is the actual election date, Chloe? What's
9th of July, so a week today.
9th, a week today. I knew it would be a Thursday, so it was either the next one or the one after. So 9th of July, when it comes to 9th of July, put the cross in Chloe Richards' box, because yeah, that's gonna do us all a big favour on that one. So with that said, I'm going to call it a night there. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoy it, and let's do Pembroke Dock Cloud. All the very best.
Be strong. Be strong.